Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to move past all the external noise for a bit and focus on something deeply internal,
Yeah.
that low-level kind of persistent tension you feel, that gap between who you really are and who you feel you have to be.
It's probably the most intimate architecture we'll ever explore, really. We spend so much time trying to define ourselves, but, the attempt itself just exposes this fundamental split.
Okay.
So today we're doing a deep dive into the psychic forces that don't just ask us to hide parts of ourselves, they compel us to bury them so deep we actually lose the map to find them again.
It's that feeling of vigilance, you know? You could be sitting calmly in a meeting or just relaxing on a Saturday, but underneath all that, there's this inner patrol. You're terrified that some, unmeasured breath, some slight tremor of emotion might betray the storm you're refusing to even name.
And that is the absolute core of this exploration. That internal conflict exists because, well, the ego is just not the master in its own house. We think we're in charge of our minds. We really do. But the vast majority of our motivation, our pain, it comes from a place we hardly ever visit.
So the central question for us today is, what have you buried so deep that even you don't recognize it as yours anymore?
Let's find out.
Okay, so let's start with the surface. That layer we've all perfected, the mask, that facade of, composure, competence, quiet strength.
The one built for social approval.
Exactly. It's designed to make people see you as reliable, grounded, perpetually serene even.
But that mask, it's always a compromise, isn't it? It's the price of admission into, let's call it the daylight world, a world where chaos and contradiction just aren't allowed.
And that price is steep.
It's so steep, it demands you exclude specific, often really intense desires or emotions. Think back to the first time you realized a certain feeling. Maybe a fierce want or a raw impulse or just uncontrolled anger was too much or wrong.
That sounds like the very beginning of repression. It's that silent lesson you learn. If I feel that, I won't be loved, I won't be safe.
Exactly. And the self, which is, it's supremely focused on survival and attachment, it takes those unacceptable feelings, folds them up neatly, and just tucks them away.
Yeah.
Deepest corner of the psyche. Then you throw away the key, and you truly believe you're safe now.
But believing you're safe just because you've repressed something, that's a huge misconception, right? The unconscious doesn't just forget.
It absolutely does not. And this is where it's so crucial to get the difference between forgetting and repression. See, the unconscious, it doesn't obey our commands. It doesn't get amnesia. What's repressed doesn't vanish. It migrates.
So it's an active process.
It's a very active, very energetic refusal to allow these things into consciousness. It takes constant effort. Imagine you're holding a huge inflated beach ball underwater. The moment you lose focus,
It bursts to the surface. Okay, that's a fantastic analogy. So if it's taking all this energy to hold it down, the system is going to leak. It has to. What are the first leaks we should maybe look for?
they come out wherever the ego's control is weakest. Often they manifest as emotional explosions. You might have these sudden, totally disproportionate fits of rage over something.
Yeah.
Completely trivial.
A misplaced key.
A misplaced key, a slow driver. Because the real exiled rage has just attached itself to the first available target.
I get the behavioral side, but what about the physical? We hear so much about the exhaustion of just existing. It's not just a mood.
And that's the toll. That's the toll of the inner fortress, that constant maintenance, the holding down of the ball. It manifests physically, unexplained aches and pains, chronic exhaustion, even digestive issues. That's often the language of the repressed. It's the body trying to speak for the mind.
Which makes the social symptoms just as telling. When you see someone who is just completely unguarded, maybe too loud, too emotional, and you feel that strange, almost aggressive reaction, a mix of envy and contempt.
That judgment is a defense mechanism in itself, You're thinking, how dare they be so careless? But underneath that contempt is this painful recognition of your own prison. The self starts to feel hollow because the most vital, the most potent parts, the parts that felt too raw, have been cut away. The mask isn't heavy because it's thick, it's heavy because the person underneath it is empty.
Which leads right into that classic anxiety dream, doesn't it? Standing naked in a public place. It's never actually about being naked.
Never. That dream is the return of the repressed in symbolic form. It's that moment where your deepest flaws, your most embarrassing needs are about to be exposed. The waking mask is the antidote to that terror. It's the armor that says, I am only what I allow you to see.
So let's dig into the architecture then. Why do we even build this split in the first place? It must start incredibly early.
Oh, it begins with that childhood imperative to be good. It's the moment a desire becomes dangerous because it threatens your connection to, your parents, your caregivers. Maybe it was rage when their love felt conditional, or a fierce need for attention that was met with shame. The lesson you learn is, to be loved, you have to be predictable, quiet, controlled, not authentic.
And that forces the split.
Yeah.
You create the public self that gets praised, and the exiled private self that's just trembling with want. Once that split is there, the ego needs some pretty sophisticated tools to keep that private self locked down.
It does. It needs defense mechanisms. The psyche's amazing sleight of hand. The first one we see all the time is projection. This is basically seeing what you can't tolerate in yourself, in other people.
So what does that sound like in normal conversation?
It sounds like everyone at my office is so petty and judgmental when deep down you're terrified of your own judgmental thoughts.
Or they're so manipulative.
Exactly. When you're struggling with a desire to control an outcome, you're literally creating a world populated by your own shadows, all while believing you're just observing other people.
And then there's reaction formation, which is, it's one of the most spectacular defenses.
Yeah.
It's the overcorrection.
It's a complete overcorrection. So if you harbor this intense, aggressive resentment toward a difficult colleague, your reaction formation might compel you to become excessively kind to them, helpful, deferential.
It's a psychological barricade.
It is. It explains those aggressively saintly personalities. Their immense goodness isn't really generosity. It's a fortress they've built to deny the volatile impulse underneath. Their goodness is the symptoms.
And underneath all of this, the mask, the projection, the overcorrecting, we have libido, which you've defined not just as sexual energy, but as the full force of psychic investment. That still feels a little abstract. How does that look in real life?
Think about where you unconsciously pour huge amounts of energy. Libido is your drive to live, to connect, to achieve. But if your early attachments were fraught, if being vulnerable got you punished, that drive gets all tangled up in knots.
So you might crave success, but then sabotage yourself right before the finish line.
Exactly. Or you invest years of devotion into a relationship that you just know is harmful. That frantic, painful investment, that's the libido entangled in this core conflict.
The conflict is always the same. If I become who I truly want to be, if I become powerful or real, will I still be loved? Or will I be abandoned for breaking that original rule about being good?
And that old conflict, it brings us right into the present, especially when we try to look inward. We hit resistance. Resistance isn't just, avoiding therapy. It's the ego throwing up barriers anytime we get close to the edges of what's been repressed.
So resistance isn't an enemy. It's more like the psyche's loyalty to its oldest survival trick. It's whispering, don't go there, it's not safe. But how do you recognize that in your own life, outside of a formal setting?
It often looks like rationalization or intellectualization, it sounds like. Oh, I know why I have this problem. I've read all the books. I understand my childhood, but I still can't change.
So you're talking about the past, but not feeling the past in the present.
Exactly. The knowledge is there, but the feeling is blocked.
And that is where transference comes in. The past isn't past. It lives in our patterns.
Transference is just the unconscious redirection of those old emotional blueprints onto current relationships where they don't belong. The anxiety you feel when your boss gives you some simple feedback, it might trigger the exact same dread you felt with an authoritarian parent 20 years ago.
Or your partner's silence feels just like your mother's withdrawal.
Precisely.
And the power in this is that the psyche is actively trying to reenact the original wound in the present. But why? What's the point of that?
It's trying to repeat in order to resolve. It's desperate for a better ending this time. But without awareness, without realizing your partner isn't your mother, your boss isn't your father, repetition just becomes your fate. You keep finding yourself in the same emotional scene, hoping for a different outcome.
And just recreating the original pain.
Over and over.
Which means the symptom, the anxiety, the burnout, the physical pain, It was always an encrypted message.
Always. Symptoms have meaning. They're compromises between the desire that was forbidden and the rule that forbade it. Your chronic exhaustion isn't laziness. It might be your body's brilliant rebellion against a self you were forced to become to earn approval.
There comes this moment, often after years of this relentless maintenance, when the mask stops feeling like protection and it starts to feel like suffocation. It's that moment of recognition. A friend says, you seem tired, and it just hits you.
Yeah.
I am tired, not from work, from pretending.
That recognition, that's the threshold. And the work from there isn't about fixing yourself or purifying yourself of these shameful parts. It's about integration. It's about wholeness, making space for the full, messy human reality, the infantile need, the aggression, the unruly desire, all of it.
The quiet revolution, then, is realizing that the qualities you were taught to disown, your neediness, your anger, your sensuality, those are actually the sources of your vitality. Cutting them off is what drains life of its color. You become successful, admirable, but you feel hollow.
The radical act is to stop believing you have to earn the right to exist just as you are. The mask doesn't need to be shattered. That's just more violence. It just needs to be loosened to become porous. You simply allow yourself to feel a difficult emotion, unedited, just because it's real.
Because the symptom was never the enemy. It was the oldest, most loyal messenger, just trying to get your attention for years.
So we'll leave you with this thought. The invitation is to live not as the ideal you constructed, but as the real self that's, trembling just beneath the surface. What happens when you let a desire rise, unedited, and you realize the person waiting behind the mask isn't some monster that needs to be controlled, but it's just you?
So take a moment today. Just observe that faint, almost imperceptible tremor beneath the surface of your control.
Yep.
A little whisper that says, there is more here than you are letting out. And maybe this time, don't silence it.